Hello and welcome back to another Just Films and That new release special. We've got two films for you today, aren't you lucky? You probably saw this coming as well. We're going to be covering the summer's strangest cinematic double bill, which is commonly known as Barbenheimer. If you don't already know, though you probably do, two films have been released on the same day. Those films were Barbie and Oppenheimer. This has then turned into a strange cultural phenomenon of people making sure they see both of them on the same day or around the same time. Hence Barbie, Oppenheimer, Barbenheimer. Anyway, if you're listening, you probably already knew that, but just in case. Anyway, that's what I did. I didn't watch them both on the same day because I do not have like 5.5 hours or 6 hours of spare time in one go, but I have seen them both over the weekend. So I'll talk about both Barbie and Oppenheimer. I did think about splitting them into two separate episodes because I'll let you in on a little secret. That's better for our numbers, but it's not really in the spirit of it, is it? So I'll make that sacrifice for you guys at home. As ever, these are spoiler-free, so if you don't want to know anything at all, then listen to these after you've seen the films. I'm not going to do plot synopsis for either, as I'm assuming you'll probably know from seeing the trailers, but one is a film about Barbie, and the other is a biopic about Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb. Which is which? I'll let you figure it out. Sorry. If you're only interested in one of them, then feel free to skip to whichever one skip whichever one you're interested in. I'm going to be a gentleman or gentleman, thank you, and put Barbie first. So if you skip to about halfway through, that should get you to Oppenheimer, if that's what you'd rather listen to. Ready? Okay, let's go. Okay, so let's get into talking about Barbie. So what did I like about it? Overall, I loved it. Honestly, I thought it was brilliant. It's such good fun. I laughed all the way through. I cried at least twice, and I just thought the whole thing was pretty bloody wonderful. First of all, there's some really interesting themes and thematic ideas in this. It's a lot more existential and thematic and things like that than I was actually expecting. There's a lot of great ideas in there around identity, purpose, sexual politics, and the sort of general human condition and human journey. It's really funny. It is a 12A, so it does leave room for some more adult jokes, and it executes them pretty well as there being jokes in there that are obviously definitely for the adults that would go over kids' heads, as far as I can tell anyway, because I don't have kids. It does also it toes that line for what's acceptable for younger viewers. At points, I did think perhaps it's a bit too adult, but then when I left my absolutely packed screen, and it was packed, it was pretty much, there was no free seats, and there were little sort of 5-6-year-old girls bouncing around, absolutely hyper about how much they loved Barbie. So obviously it's mission accomplished in that sense because they loved it. It's really well paced too. At no point does it drag or feel like it could have lost any time or anything like that. The cast are brilliant in it. It's full to bursting with cameos and actors who have little bit parts, but at no point does it feel like it doesn't feel like something that seems to be what everyone wants from every comic book film, which is people showing up for no reason and just turning up and being like, "Hi, I'm this person," and then going again. Not only are the cast great, but really, it's clear that massive efforts have gone into this regarding sort of inclusion and diversity too, which only strengthens that message that the film has around, I suppose, equality and the human journey in general. Margot Robbie is brilliant in this. She's got a lot to do. She has quite the emotional journey to take us on, and it never really feels like the film falters from being on her shoulders for most of the time. Her physicality is great. Her posture, the way she sort of is portraying this doll-like perfect entity, this, because I can't even say woman because she is a doll in it, and she keeps up the various different types of energy that she needs to all the way through the film, and she's just so watchable, so charismatic. She's brilliant. Ryan Gosling is great in this too. He steals a lot of, and it's been said before, but he steals a lot of the scenes that he's in. He's probably the funniest part of the film, playing the sort of dim-witted Ken trying to get on with his life and stuff like that. I did hear someone say as we left, if Ryan Gosling ever gets an Oscar, it should be for this film. Look, listen, I don't agree with that because he's a very fine actor. He's done better films, better performances, but he is really good in it, and he only really has to do one thing in this. It's not like he's particularly got lots of range in it, but that being said, he is really, really funny. And then finally, the world building and the production design and the costumes are great. I mean, Barbie Land is everything you'd expect it to be. To be honest, a lot more of the film is set in Barbie Land than I thought would be, because obviously you can see in the trailer it's a lot about her going to the real world, but at least 2/3 of it, I'd say, are set in Barbie Land, and I thought it would be less. And no expense has been spared in terms of making it look, I suppose, as silly as this sounds because it's fantasy, but authentic. So all the sets and the costumes really bring it to life, and it does really sort of draw you into this like perfect neon and garish world, I suppose. Then this is all complemented by a terrific script, which really sets out the rules and ideas of the world and what Barbie Land is and what the real world is and stuff like that. There's not too much exposition, so it does leave you enough space to sort of wonder how things work. So I really enjoyed that as well. And weirdly enough, this is this is weird. It's a character-driven piece in which we accompany Barbie on a real emotional journey and an identity crisis. And those are never words I thought I'd say out loud on a podcast. In terms of dislikes, look, there wasn't much really, but in the interest of balance, I just want to make 2 points. The first point is some of the political stuff is a little bit on the nose. It's doing a really good job of getting its point across, and then towards the final third, it starts to hammer the point home a little bit, and it probably over eggs the pudding a little bit, particularly around identity and the patriarchy and stuff like that. Listen, obviously, as a man, I loathe to say this because it's not really my place, but I asked my partner, who is a real fully grown human woman, and she felt the same as well, that they sort of over-egg the pudding a little bit. So I'll take that as a general point. And then the other point is, whilst Ryan Gosling is really, really good in it, and he does steal the scenes he's in, I'd argue that he probably steals a few too many scenes when this film is supposedly so rooted in a female journey and in an identity crisis, and it's, I think but I suppose what I'm saying is it undermines the point about patriarchy a little bit when you give a man a lot of the funniest moments in the film. Yes, he is funny, but perhaps some of that could have been lost in order to underline the wider point. Okay, so now let's talk about the Heimer of Barbenheimer, starting with what I liked. Overall, look, I enjoyed Oppenheimer. I liked it. I mean, these films are so different. They're chalk and cheese. They share a couple of things, as most films do, but ultimately they're completely different. They're chalk and cheese. So it was an interesting headspace to try and get in to review both at the same time. One thing they do both have in common is great casts. Push comes to shove, I'd say Oppenheimer wins that battle, because not only does it have a good cast, but my God, do they absolutely shine in this. That's not to say people in Barbie are bad or anything like that, but they have, I suppose, less to do in it. It's more about just keeping the energy up, whereas in this, everybody absolutely turns up and delivers. There are some spectacular performances in this. Cillian Murphy is great in this. Again, he has a lot to do. There's a lot riding on his shoulders, and this may seem like a strange thing to say, but I think it's definitely worth saying. I think it's probably one of the best compliments an actor can get, but I forgot it was him and started seeing Robert Oppenheimer in front of me. Emily Blunt is great in this too, a little bit more on her character later. Florence Pugh's great in this for the little bit that she's in it. Matt Damon too. It felt like there was hundreds and hundreds of A-listers in this at different points. The real standout for me, though, was Robert Downey Jr. I love Robert Downey Jr. I think he's a great actor. He hasn't particularly flexed his dramatic muscles as much as I think he could have in the last few years, but I mean, who can blame him after the sort of, I suppose, the journey he's been on in his personal life? And if someone was paying me 75 million quid to turn up and beat Iron Man, I'd probably do that for 10 years as well. But it's nice to remember his ability to completely encapsulate and absorb and become a character, which he does in this. He's in it a lot more than I thought he would be. I thought he wouldn't be in it that much, but he's in it a good deal of the time, and he just owns the screen when he's on it. The film does feel like it's sort of like a film of 3 parts for me, really. There's the before, the during, and the after the Manhattan Project. For me, it got particularly interested in the final third, when there was some really sort of fascinating explorations of ethics and the ethics and the impact of what it was they were actually doing in terms of what war allows man to do, and what's acceptable, and does killing thousands of people save thousands of people, and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of people have compared it to things like JFK. I don't think that that's wrong at all, but I think this is far more engaging and wider reaching in terms of its subject matter, really. It's about a much more impactful thing on the human race, rather than JFK's obviously had a massive impact, but that's one thing, whereas this is lots of things. The overall production design is brilliant for me. The real standout, again, like a lot of Nolan films, is the sound. There's a lot going on here in terms of the sound and the music. So there's a sort of little bits of it where there's like a metronomic ticking, like tick, tick, tick in the background that really builds the tension and sort of that leads to a more epic feel later when you get to the louder end of the scale when it comes to things like the bomb going off. And it did feel very, very epic. And this is all accompanied by a really powerful and dramatic score, which overall I found, to be honest, I just found the whole, it was quite overwhelming in places, but I think that's obviously a purposeful choice by Christopher Nolan, and it worked. In terms of dislikes, look, I'm going to say it, right? I've said it before, and you're probably thinking, oh, shut up, just watch it, right? But it's too long, right? It's 3 hours, and I appreciate they pack a lot into that time. And listen, I got no issue with longer films, but it's about feeling the length. It's about keeping me engaged. And this kept me largely engaged throughout it, but there are scenes with a lot of men just sitting around and talking, and at points it felt a little bit bloated and a little bit subject matter heavy. I think for me, if this isn't Christopher Nolan, if this is not Nolan or a director of similar profile, I think a lot of this is getting edited out. But because obviously he is who he is, he's allowed to pretty much do what he wants and have full creative control. Listen, he knows what he's doing. That's just my personal opinion on the length and the sort of pacing of it. And then finally, I think that Emily Blunt is criminally underused in this. I appreciate it's about Robert Oppenheimer and not Kitty Oppenheimer, but she's undoubtedly a huge, she's his wife, so she's a huge part of his life, and she just doesn't get enough to do for me. Particularly, there's a particular moment towards the end where she's given the chance to shine, and she knocks it out of the park. There's a bit where she's sort of going toe-to-toe with a guy defending her husband, and it's the strongest moment, one of the strongest moments in the film for me. It is a very male-heavy film, and I get that to some extent because, look, it's a truthful retelling of history, it's a biopic, and I do think maybe maybe it could have been a little bit less subject matter and a little bit more of Oppenheimer's personal life. Might have brought a different level of emotional depth and a different level of engagement to it. That being said, I'm sure Christopher Nolan knows what he's doing, so I'll shut up with my silly opinions. Interesting point, the woman sat in front of me in the cinema, I was making notes at the end, and she stood up and asked me what I thought, and I asked her what she thought. She said, well, I'm doing a master's in nuclear physics or nuclear fission or something like that, so I'm studying Oppenheimer. And I said, how accurate is it? And she said it's pretty much 100% accurate. So I thought that was interesting from someone doing a master's in the relevant topic. Look, overall, both films are great. They are both very, very well-made films, and I'm glad that this whole Barbenheimer thing has happened. If I had to pick a favourite, I'd say Barbie, but both are completely different, and the only real thing they have in common is that they share the same release date. That being said, I think it's great, as I said, that this phenomenon has happened. Both screenings are in, were really, really busy. It's nice to see young girls going to watch Barbie wearing pink and talking about how much they love Barbie, and it's good to see filmmakers like Christopher Nolan, auteur filmmakers doing what they want, really packing them in. So I enjoyed it. Listen, get out there, give both of them, give one of them a watch, whatever, make up your own mind and support cinemas, because I think they need all the help they can get at the moment. All that remains to be said is thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back with our usual episodes every Tuesday. Cheerio!